You've been told over and over that love is supposed to complete you, as if you're just half a person waiting for the other half. Shatter that mirror. That story isn't about tenderness. It's a lesson in dependency. In the harsh light, one question remains. Who are you when there's no one left to reflect back a likable image? Nietzsche would have smirked at the drama. We mix up warmth with chains, comfort with giving up. The search for a soulmate sometimes turns into the sneakiest way to escape yourself. The real test starts where the performance ends in the bare room of solitude, without applause or backups. That's where your desires get weighed without props, your choices without witnesses, your backbone without crutches. If your heart craves company, let it first learn not to be a demand. What remains when you strip away the need to be loved? If there's still a core, then love stops being a fix, it becomes an extra. We've been taught to see being single as a waiting room numbered ticket in hand, soft music playing, promise that a door will soon open to real life. Screens push the same ritual, rom-coms, pop hooks, dating app slogans, until the idea sinks into your bones. Being coupled up means you're validated, staying solo means you're flawed. Under that gloss, Nietzsche would spot the old fear dressed up new, running from yourself, wrapped in shared destiny. The norm doesn't demand that you love, it demands you conform, smooth your edges, give up the right to be unlikable. The relationship becomes an amnesty against facing reality. You're off the hook from meeting yourself. But the waiting room has a price. You trade your path for distraction, your voice for a chorus where you sing in tune, your standards for lukewarm peace. Modern vice, settle early, reply fast, reassure always, trains you in compliance. You learn to earn someone else's presence before earning your own. From this dilution comes a quiet lie. You think you're generous, but you're just convenient. You think you're deep, but you're just compatible. You confuse the warmth of habits with the light of truth, and you doze off in a closeness without substance. Rejecting the waiting room isn't hating love, it's refusing the assignment. Being single stops being a holding area and becomes a workspace. You rebuild your edges, sort your loyalties, learn the difference between comfort and growth. The gaze you seek outside must first be possible inside, without makeup or cheers. Then, the signs shift. Silences don't threaten, they clarify. Empty Sundays don't blame, they shape. Temptations to scatter don't seduce, they warn. Culture will say you're falling behind. You'll know you're gaining ground, because the only life worth offering is one you've stopped begging for. When the door opens, if it opens, it won't rescue you from emptiness, it'll welcome your substance. The trap doesn't show up as a prison, but as a gentle touch. Two people draw close, not to expand, but to relieve each other. Without saying it, they sign a silent pact. I'll carry your fear if you carry mine. I'll validate your escapes if you excuse mine. It's a non-aggression agreement disguised as love. We call it compromise, maturity, relationship sense. Nietzsche would see a defensive alliance against the demand to become. Instead of climbing higher, you set up a cozy blanket. Comfort over clarity, soothing over structure. Soon, the routine kicks in. You tune your words to the other's emotional weather. You trim a project, then an edge, then part of your voice, to keep things smooth. We confuse kindness with avoiding friction. We confuse care with managing someone else's anxiety. We confuse loyalty with tolerating smallness. Under that padding, the soul shrinks. Creative drive fades not by choice, but through 1,000 invisible shifts. An evening without reading, a morning without discipline, a boundary pushed back a step to void drama. The relationship turns into maintenance work, fixing fragile egos, keeping the vibe steady, subsidizing fear of emptiness. Self-respect dwindles, because no one admires a self-denier for long. Even the other person subconsciously loses the respect you've lost for yourself. Being around someone who bends starts to weigh, like a mirror that distorts your true size. The trickiest part is that this deal feeds on noble language. I love you, so I adapt. We last, so we yield. But it's an overdrawn account. Each unchosen concession digs a debt of bitterness. Each polite lie adds fog. Each piled-up sacrifice builds silent anger that tenderness can't melt. Bought peace becomes an endless truce where you survive side by side, smaller and smaller. Escaping the trap starts by naming the pact. Not blaming the other, but revoking the secret clause. I won't ask you to cover my escapes anymore, and I won't cover yours. This no isn't a breakup, it's the end of collusion. If love stays, let it stay because two cores face each other without bending. Otherwise, let solitude reset the balance. In that clarity, union becomes possible again. Not as a hideout, but as a meeting of two wills that no longer apologize for existing. The mechanics are precise, almost clinical. Praise lands, skin warms, a quiet ping seals the deal. Chemistry rewards, ego complies. What we call love often turns into an intermittent reinforcement system where each smile delivers a micro hit and each silence triggers a craving. The need for validation isn't about affection. It's about direction. You turn toward the next stroke like a plant trapped by the window. Nietzsche would name this light, differently heard morality, which doesn't illuminate but dazzles just enough to standardize gazes. You stop seeking inner truth. You chase the social temperature where you don't shiver anymore. Dependency on validation starts with a slow surrender of the mind. To be loved, you simplify. To be safe, you repeat. To be reassuring, you smooth. Thinking stops being an act and becomes a service. Deliver the expected dish, lukewarm and easy to swallow. Edges round off with the scroll. You learn to sniff out the collective mood, to speak just at the edge of consensus, where you risk neither loneliness nor depth. Dopamine measures conformity cuts. Gradually, originality feels reckless, nuance a luxury, disagreement a threat to belonging. The question, is it true, gives way to is it applauded? And your spine takes the shape of the chair you've sat in too long. The herd doesn't impose by force, but by vibe. It doesn't command, it suggests, hints, praises, saddens. It multiplies faint signals until the map of a loud, forbidden etches into your skin. With each public bravo, a fiber gives. With each vague disapproval, a nerve tightens, and you promise to do better, meaning do the same. This emotional economy rewards caution over courage, code, recognition over creation. You tire yourself out staying in the likable zone, learn to ask permission before fully existing, pat yourself on the back for a virtue that's just self-control out of fear. You have to take back the remote. Insert a cool gap between stimulus and response. Create a checkpoint where impulses declare their goods. A compliment isn't an order. A frown isn't law. They're data that don't enter without inspection. The protocol is simple and demanding. Pause the rush, tolerate dissonance. Let the urge to please settle until it loses its normalizing power. Solitude becomes a lab where you uninstall apps that drain attention and rewrite soul, access permissions. Then, herd morality shrinks to size, no longer a sky to fear, but background noise. The mind sharpens again, expression becomes sparing, the gaze able to endure temporary unpopularity that every real step demands. Solitude isn't an empty hallway. It's a locked workshop where the world's noise can't get in. You cross a threshold few accept, no witnesses. There, every idea stops being a move to charm. It has to carry its own weight. The metaphor fits the place as a forge. Silence, the hammer. Discipline, the anvil. You lay on the hot metal everything in your life that warps from fear of being alone. Project started to please. Choices dictated by others' moods. Traits polished until the edge is gone. At the first strike, smoke stings the eyes, illusions burning. Those learned self, images that don't survive the heat. You thought you wanted to be loved. You discover you mostly wanted to stop being afraid. You thought you sought a soulmate. You realize it's mainly the exhaustion of holding your core without support. Staring into the void isn't romantic. It's methodical. You sit with what shakes, the craving for recognition, the compulsion to explain, the escape into distractions that mimic life. Nietzsche called it choosing your suffering. Here, pain isn't an accident, it's the tool that reshapes the alloy. You run the experiment until a shift happens, sensation loses its command status. It becomes data. It informs, doesn't dictate. As the arm lifts and strikes, soft layers peel off. Sentences straighten. Gaze sobers. Promises rarefy. You stop arguing against fear, you make it work, like taming heat to harden steel. In this space, time changes texture. Hours have edges, days a thread. You shift from reactive calendar to sovereign one. Read when the mind is clear, create before exposing, exhaust the body to rest the soul, cut off stimuli until boredom returns, that gateway to depth. Relationships move to the edges, no longer numbing agents, but appointments. People don't come to fill you, they come to meet you. The forge produces a side effect the world notices without naming: quiet density. You don't need to hook, you hold. You can be contradicted without shifting, seduced without dissolving, threatened without speeding up. What you offer isn't a plea for response. It's presence that's already paid its price in the hot room, where you learn to become yourself without an audience. The will to power isn't a hand on others, it's reclaiming your own. It doesn't command the world before rebuilding the inner city. Until now, your impulse is legislated by urgency. Fear signed decrees, desire issued orders, laziness voted delays. You obeyed because emotion shouted louder than law. Reclaiming authority, Nietzsche style, means dissolving that noisy parliament and installing a silent executive. Feelings become technical advisors. Decisions reclaim the sovereign seal. The formula is simple and unforgiving. The signal informs, it no longer commands. You start by rewriting the constitution of priorities. Not, what feels good now, but, what builds my power to be over time. Acts stop being reactions, they become causes. Sleep becomes an institution, not a leftover. Reading a ministry, not a hobby. Physical effort a voluntary tax that funds clarity. You strip screens of the right to open your mornings. You deny moods the power to set the pace. What pleased the inner crowd loses the throne. The citadel grows not by flashes, but by tough routine. Same time, same move, same slowness, until trajectory replaces motivation. Next comes the hierarchy of desires. You don't deny appetite, you educate it. Base hungers learn to wait. Noble ones get the rare resource: your peak focus, clear hours, fresh strength. You stop wasting your best on soft obligations and conversations that birth nothing. Refusal needs no justification, it just happens. This thrift isn't emotional dryness, it's force ecology. Water what bears fruit, let the vampires die. The will to power also fixes the grammar of I. You no longer say, I'm anxious so I don't act, but there's anxiety and I act anyway. You don't say, I'm not inspired, but I enter the task and inspiration follows the footprint. Identity stops being an alibi, it becomes a work in progress. As this logic settles, fear loses God status, it becomes a diligent weatherman you listen to without handing over the wheel. Then, the outside world changes texture. Others' agendas don't summon, they propose. Pressures don't impose, they test your frame's strength. People can demand, you keep your tempo. They can flatter, your threshold doesn't drop. They can threaten absence, your course doesn't veer. You've conquered no one, you've conquered yourself. And this silent conquest sets an evidence the room senses before understanding here. Law isn't momentary emotion but the structure of a chosen life. Pain isn't an alarm to flee, it's material to shape. What we call suffering isn't one size fits all. There's pain that corrodes, from avoidance, deferred promises, scattered chaos, and pain that sculpts, a clean resistance that gives you form. Choosing the second demands hard clarity. No more begging for numbing, no more renaming laziness as gentleness, no more confusing understanding yourself with excusing inaction. Nietzsche would call it the art of turning energy against yourself to build up. Asceticism isn't spite, it's geometry. Draw a line, return to it, even when the body bargains, even when the mind invents plausible detours. Mornings belong to the task that boosts your power to be, not the ritual of excuses. Fatigue becomes info, not an out, comfort a reward, not a home. In this logic, effort stops being punishment and becomes a precision tool. You place weights where the soul shakes, slow reading when impatience wants to skim, writing without audience when ego demands one, physical labor when the mind seeks abstract escape. Useful pain shows in its marks, it clears the gaze, orders the day, simplifies speech. Vain pain leaves an aftertaste of polished chaos and lukewarm guilt. so set thresholds. 30 minutes of own discomfort before any concession. A chapter read without skipping, a page written without tweaking the first line, a session pushed to the last rep. Will stops being heroic surge, it becomes regular management of the hard, until hard normalizes. Nothing spectacular happens, and that's the sign. The face doesn't harden, it simplifies, the calendar doesn't fill. It densifies, relationships don't crumble, they sort. As you choose building pain, other pains lose residence rights. Social voids don't scare, they free workshop clarity. Comparisons slow, judgment deflates, envy fizzles without fuel. You stop proving, you persist. Then the outer world responds quietly, but steadily. Opportunities match your rhythm. Excess words vanish on their own. Vague demands hit a contour they can't level. Form emerges not in the mirror, but in the hold of days. What you endure stops being what happens to you. It's what you've chosen to grow. True attraction doesn't come from displayed lack, but silent wholeness. When you stop expecting someone to fill the crack, your presence gains weight. You don't call, you magnetize. Distance becomes an art, not to dodge, but to keep the height for clear sight. People often mistake this reserve for coldness. It's actually demanding hospitality. You only host what withstands your light's clarity. No more masquerade, no seduction by distraction, no anxious closeness. But form an ellipse where your orbits exist without crashing, each keeping its gravity. This self-sufficiency isn't indifference, it's soul hygiene. It rejects trades where you ask the other to mute your inner noise you won't face. You stop turning relationships into painkillers, treat them like rare wine open for celebrating fullness, not surviving void. Signs redistribute. Silence between texts doesn't threaten. It checks coherence. Brief absence doesn't alarm. It confirms autonomy. Speech becomes tailoring, fitting without squeezing. Nietzsche would say will stops begging guarantees. It prefers the risk of being itself over the safety of dissolving. The aesthetics of distance is also an ethics of thresholds. You keep doors that open slowly and close quietly, so crossing earns value. Rarity isn't tactic, it's outcome. Your clear hours, calm projects don't go to chance. And it's this no-sale refusal that makes meeting desirable. People approach less to capture, more to align. They come less for soothing, more for held truth. Being with stops being reassuring fusion and becomes fertile side by side. Two full structures neighbor and, through proximity, expand. There's a sovereign paradox: the more you walk alone, the more your step invites. Because someone who doesn't need love can finally love without trade conditions. Distance guards this generosity from seizure. It makes your yes an act, not dependency. They'll call you too independent. Suspect hardness. Yet those who read nuance will spot the contained warmth of a fire not used for constant heating, but to light when seeing matters. Aura comes from there, a magnetic field of choices, sharp borders, owned slowness that strips fear of bargaining power. And if love arrives, it doesn't save you, it meets you. Two already flowing springs find a shared bed without losing sources. Living as someone's self-sufficient means building days around a core, not an alert schedule. Morning doesn't belong to noise. It belongs to what builds your power to be. You enter the day like pushing a workshop door, air fresh, tools in place, task waiting. First, feed the mind before exposure, slow reading that digs, not distracts, lines written without witness, aligning thought with spine, body worked so the head doesn't drift. Solitude isn't retreat, it's tuning condition. Remove the chorus to hear the true note. Messages wait, your tempo isn't borrowed from another's heartbeat. In exchanges, treat words like fine material. Speak less to weigh more. You stop multiplying explanations, you lay decisions. Refusal stops being drama, it becomes clear border. Emotions have expression rights, not veto, they inform, you decide. This hygiene shows in small, unshowy moves. Reply when mind's clear, defer when requests fuzzy, ask for clarity over filling in. As protocol sets, external validation loses appeal, praise pleases without necessity, criticism interests without verdict. Your schedule stops being alibi, it becomes grammar. You see an alternation that keeps you upright, focused effort blocks, sharp breaks, still moments where dust settles and hastes invisible becomes seen. Relationships change feel, presence doesn't numb. It lifts, listening doesn't flatter, it sharpens, affection doesn't promise. It proves. You hold ours like a heavy door, no slamming, no yielding. If pressed, let rush die against your rhythm's mass. This forms days that sign your name without shouting. Nothing flashy, all precise. You stop hoping for completion. You become someone walking with doesn't cost verticality. So if love comes, it finds sure footing. You don't ask to be held up, you offer a path. You're not a wandering half, you're a source choosing its channel. When dependency falls, life regains contour. Days stop being neon, lit halls become trails with sky. Solitude's no desert when held, it's a workshop polishing tools, a forge making the blade worthy to cut falsehood. Then love, if it comes, isn't transfusion, it's meeting of two full reserves. You don't seek shelter, you offer a built home. Will to power crushes no one, it sets a core, and the core lets through what aligns. Make this season a quiet vow. Less pleading, more stance, less waiting, more work. Let easy words dissolve in silence you hold like a table edge. Welcome slowness that makes you readable to yourself. Tolerate discomfort that makes you real. Withdraw from noise until you hear the honest note. And when fear claims its due, treat it as messenger, not king. The rest follows the logic of well-built things. People come to walk, not cling. They read your presence as invite, not lack. If love crosses your threshold, let it find lights on and walls straight. You have nothing to prove, you have to become. The man who needs nothing commands all. Stay silent. Observe, then strike, not someone, but what's in you still asking permission to exist. Declare nothing. Execute.